The drawn line is the way that we start to understand the world around us. So like objects don't really become real to me until I've been able to explore the parameters of them as a drawing. Some people rely on face to understand situation. I find myself relying on body language to understand things better because I think that, you know, we can lie easily, but your body can't. When I'm making this work, what I'm thinking about is like, how am I here with this thing and how is this thing a part of this world with me? If you worry about what your work is in contrast to something else, you're never gonna make the work, right? You have to let it evolve and become the thing it's gonna be. There's something really magical about the way a drawing comes to life when it's not just a flat piece of paper. You know, we worry so much about like this individuality every day. We get up, we look in the mirror, we're like trying to finesse ourselves so that we can really stand out in the world. But like when it comes down to it, these spaces like, we all start to look similar and there's like a sort of movement and a flow and a water to it all. You have to make the work you have to make, and you have to let the questions be the questions you're answering, regardless of a market deciding it has value or not. My name is Muntges. I'm an artist and I draw. I work between installation and sort of traditional drawing spaces to create environments for myself.
How has your work evolved over the years?
I've always been interested in drawing. I studied printmaking when I was in school, and I think I approached my practice as though I am a printmaker. I'm always thinking about repetition and building and making these spaces that could exist in both a printmaking perspective, but also in a drawing perspective. And so I think over the years, it's, you know, I started a little more simplistically and it's sort of grown and become more complicated. I try to find myself, I try to answer questions about the world through my work. And so I'm asking myself more and more complicated questions as my career has progressed. And I think that sort of shows up in the way the work looks.
Can you talk a bit more about your expression in the work?
So this is actually a little complicated for me because it's always about understanding the space around me. So I forget who said this. There was this idea that like the drawn line is the way that we start to understand the world around us. So like objects don't really become real to me until I've been able to explore the parameters of them as a drawing. Sometimes that's like been literal, where I've had to, you know, traverse an object with the line itself and make it like come to life and feel like this thing. Sometimes it's cascading over a paper and like really building a form and understanding like what the front and the side and the back of it is. And so like when I understand those things, I understand what my relationship to them is. And so when I'm making this work, what I'm thinking about is like, how am I here with this thing and how is this thing a part of this world with me, and trying to answer those questions. And so because I'm Brooklyn based, a lot of the stuff that I've been focused on, especially recently, has been about, I guess you could describe it as my commute in a way. So how do I exist in my community? How do I get from point A to point B? Who are the people that I'm seeing? What are the objects that build those spaces as I'm going to them, and what is the ground that I'm walking on? And really taking a step back and looking at that through like a drawing perspective and pulling the pieces that I really want to understand better and putting them onto paper or putting them into object and thinking about how those relate back to me and creating works out of that space.
Interesting. I see a lot of correspondence in your style and Mr. Doodle. So
yes, Mr. Doodle.
And yeah, you've told me you're not influenced by him. So I just wonder like your like perspective on his work and why he is like more commercially successful.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Doodle, absolutely not an influence for me, though I do understand we to be traversing in similar landscapes. I think that his approach is something that, you know, he's more focused on character and image and sort of, I don't want to say like cartoon, but it's got sort of a playful feel to the line, whereas like I'm thinking more about the object. But he's done something that like crosses into a space that I love to operate in, and he's making three-dimensional environments feel like a drawing landscape where the person exists in that work, and it's something that I'm incredibly drawn to and find really important. I think he's probably commercially more successful because he's able to produce those drawings in a quicker succession. He's got a quicker response for the way the work is going up, and mine is, it's a lot more time-based because I think about time as one of the tools in my box that I'm pulling from. And so even though the stuff is evolving slowly, it's happening, and I'm building the spaces I need to build. So, but it's exciting to see his stuff out there because I think it helps the work that I'm doing too. It's like, I don't see it as a competition. I don't see it as like one being better than the other. I see it as sort of like this really beautiful conversation in a whole environment of, you know, how drawing can exist in the world with us.
When you do figurative art, so it's much different than abstract stuff, right? So are you ever in the fear of like comments like your work doesn't stand out as much from others stylistically?
I don't know. I guess that hasn't been something I've heard about my work.
So no, I'm not saying that, but like just doing like figurative stuff, like a lot of people do figurative stuff, and style comes in like a lesser apparent way than like expressive stuff. So
I think that like with most artists, our hand is doing the thing that it does, whether it, you know, it turns into something like this, or if it turns into something like this rug or this chair. I think that if you worry about what your work is in contrast to something else, you're never going to make the work, right? You have to let it evolve and become the thing it's going to be. And these, I wouldn't even say are in a state of finish because there's a whole other layer of things that's going to happen on top. I have a screen print that gets built on top of them when I'm done, of the tiles of the subway tile design I have for it. So it's still evolving.
How do you draw a line between balancing like the commercial value of a piece of work and the artistic value of a piece of work?
I don't think about the commercial at all, ever. Unless somebody's hired me to do something specific, I really don't think about the commercial application. Everything that I'm trying to do is really trying to find my way through it. And I love when it resonates. It's great when people are like really drawn to it. And when it doesn't hit, it doesn't make it any less valuable to me. I mean, one might say I'm very defined by sort of these black and white spaces I've spent a lot of time building. But as you can see from some of the other stuff, I'm not afraid of using color. It's just when I find it appropriate, it shows up. I would say that it's more the line that makes it mine. And when I'm using that and letting it go where it needs to go, I don't worry about what the end game is.
Why are you so like mostly monochromatic?
That is such a great question. I think because I could see the work the most there. It wasn't hidden by a brush stroke. It wasn't soft and easy to walk away from. It's got this high graphic quality, and I think that I learned how to build these spaces most effectively by using just this black and white. And I also think, like, especially when it comes to like the objects work, it sort of eliminates the familiarity of these things and makes you stop and really invest in looking at it again, and trying to understand it, maybe with the same sort of sense of awe and wonder that I had when I was doing the work myself.
So when you move this like drawing style and move them into like real life, like dioramas, or like you paint them on your tables, your chairs, your plants and everything.
Yeah.
So I just wonder for like why you made that choice, and how like what effect do you want to use the line to interact with the space?
You know, the dimensional stuff really started because I wanted to know what it would feel like to be inside the drawing more, like to feel the lines very tactily. And I've done a few experiments with putting figures, like real people, into the space and doing small interventions. There's something really magical about the way a drawing comes to life when it's not just a flat piece of paper. Um, every time I put something together, every time an object sort of turns and engages with another object, it becomes another drawing because those lines are never the same with every installation and with every move. And so like every time I'm working with this stuff, I sort of feel that same sense of like, oh my God, that's a really great new drawing right there. And you're like, you're sort of shifting things, and it makes it feel really exciting in a lot of ways. I just wanted to know what it felt like personally. So these are like the worlds I'm building for myself.
In the characters that you draw figuratively, are there specific characters or social class that you're looking for to choose the characters?
No. So I let it be what is my experience in the world. So these figures are people that I saw out in the world. And they were things that I was sort of drawn to because they very much represent a huge portion of what my movement through these commuting spaces are. Like specifically, like these three behind me, are actually four. They sort of represent like a broad swath of what I might see on a normal day, right? You've got the woman or the people who are working in the subways, selling, trying to create a living. You've got the commuters who are moving through, carrying as much as they can because the subway is the most convenient way for us to get from point A to point B, and just trying to survive that hustle. And then you've got the people who actually work to sustain the system on the side. And I think that they sort of represent this huge swath of how we engage with that space. And then even with like, you know, pieces like this panel over here where I'm looking at people and like how, you know, we worry so much about like this individuality every day. We get up, we look in the mirror, we're like trying to finesse ourselves so that we can really stand out in the world. But like when it comes down to it, these spaces like, we all start to look similar, and there's like a sort of movement and a flow and a water to it all. And it's so interesting to me to think about people as a group rather than like a specific individual in some ways.
Do you think this applies to contemporary art as well?
Well, sure. I mean, contemporary art would be anything that's happening right now. There's trends, right? Like we've got this work that sort of rises up every couple of years that really sort of pushes us into thinking about contemporary art differently. I would say like we're seeing more textile sewing and weaving stuff sort of becoming interesting and big again. But a couple years ago, it was, you know, painting having a huge renaissance again and coming back through. And so like, if you focus on what's important in like a specific year or a specific window, then you're not really making work. Like you have to be true to your voice. You have to be engaged with the world around you and have to be responding to the things that grab your attention. And I think if you sort of just focus on those things and like really think about what your place is, it's always a contemporary practice, whether the questions are about identity or whether they're about, you know, rocks, right? It's contemporary, it's now, because these are things that come to us.
So like you're saying, from my understanding, so you're saying like the loss of individuality is a happening thing, but to be a true artist, you have to make something that walks out of this, like, assimilation of style.
Sure, yeah. You have to be true to yourself, always. Yeah. If you're following trends in the world, you're following other people's ideas, right? Like, where do you fit into that? You have to make the work you have to make, and you have to let the questions be the questions you're answering, regardless of a market deciding it has value or not.